this is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for your purpose, your power, your journey to authenticity. And what I love about this podcast that I'm doing in conjunction with Cleveland 13 News is I'm finding individuals who have a story to share, which my guest does, Dean Weitenhagen. He wrote a book about learning how to live. And, you know, Dean, I just have to say, this is so important to me right now. And it's not based on your story, but it's based on the title. And that is, I lost my husband 9 weeks ago.
Oh, gosh.
And when I lost him, everybody said to me, you know, and we were married 42 years. So it's not like, you know, and they all said to me, oh my God, what are you going to do now? And I said, I'm very lucky. My husband and I talked about living our lives, meaning, yes, there will be grief. Yes, there will be sadness. Yes, there will be changes. But you're going to learn how to live your life. It seems like your life got changed due to an illness. So take us on your journey, because we're all out there struggling with something, thinking, oh, woe is me. But you didn't say that.
Well, I would have a few years ago, but the experience of lying in a bed for 4 months during cancer treatments gives you a lot of time to think. I'll back up real quickly. In my story, the book really begins with a love story. When I met my wife 20 years ago, we had both had long marriages. My divorce was, I thought, the worst thing that could have ever happened to me. Now, as it turns out, it was a good thing, which we learned. What I've learned is our soul, and Dr. Dean DeMartini calls it our source of unconditional love, walks down the center path of life, neither looking to the bad nor the good, because it all happens to you. But bad turns into good, good turns into bad. Don't worry about it. Well, 20 years ago, I met my wife, and we lived the life fantastic. Traveled the world, traveled the United States, coast to coast, just had the best time of our lives. Our children were grown. And then she was here in Scottsdale, where I live, with her mother, visiting her mother. And she came back to Des Moines, but she had a stroke. And 10 days in the hospital, 3 months of rehabilitation, physical rehab, didn't work. Her right arm was still leaden at her side. She couldn't raise it. She could barely walk, and her mind was really messed up. We heard that they fixed strokes in China. It's a long story. I won't get into it, but she said to me one day, Dean, pack your bags. We're going to China. So in 2016, she had the stroke very late in 15. So 2016, we went to China. It was a prearranged trip. There was a woman we had found out that was in a neighboring town that had had a bad stroke, learned about the practice there, gone, and decided with her church to set up a missionary position there to help bring people there. So we went to Tianjin, China. Patsy and I went. We picked up, packed, and we went. I stayed a month. The treatment was planned for 3 months daily with a doctor of traditional Chinese medicine.
Okay.
There's a TCM college in Tianjin, China, which is southeast of Beijing, a couple of hours. Still a large, 20 million people, large city. And so we went. We were in a lovely hotel. This lady had set all of this up. We stayed at a hotel. The doctor came to us every day in the room and did his magic on Patsy. I left for a month in the middle. I came back, and when I came back, she said, "Look at this," and she raised her arm and to me, and she was already being healed.
Wow.
So yeah, she got her life back. I mean, she couldn't drive. She couldn't. It was bad, but here she is back. So 3 months. I come home for a month. I go back. She's getting better. We come back to the United States. Well, then, so that's near the end of 17, near the end of 16. In January of 17, we were going to snowbird here. In the meantime, her mother passed away, unfortunately, but we dealt with that all. In January of 17, we were going to be snowbirds. So we came to Scottsdale, rented a house, and I had a routine blood test with my PA, not PA, nurse NP,
Yeah.
back in Iowa. And she, just before we left in December of 16, and she said, Dean, I don't like this. I'm going to send this to your doctor. She did. He didn't even call me. He just had the cancer hospital in Des Moines schedule a visit
Wow.
to come down and see them. I called them and said, I can't make it. I'm going to be a snowbird in January. So I got my doctor to refer me to Mayo Clinics, which is a big deal in the Midwest, Rochester, Minnesota, which is only 3 hours north of Des Moines, but they have a huge campus out here. So I got my doctor to refer me. I went to the Mayo campus here. Sure enough, acute myeloid leukemia, fatal cancer. What are we going to do? I said, the doctor, a wonderful doctor, Nandita Kira, said, I'm going to put you in the hospital today. I said, no, wait just a minute. This was January of 17. Said, let me get back to Rochester. Let me get back to Des Moines and treat at Rochester. She said, if you can be there by tomorrow, I'll let you go. Patsy, my dear wife, said, I can make it happen. She got a flight for me that night. I flew back. I get a friend to drive me to Rochester. 2 months of treatment for AML, which is, it is curable, but only in one sense, and I'll get to that. Otherwise, it's fatal. So they treat me for 2 months, chemotherapy, heavy chemotherapy. They kill the cancer. The only way to continue to beat it is with a stem cell transplant. It used to be bone marrow transplants. Now most of them are stem cell transplants. The problem was I didn't have a good match. My son was my best match. He was only half a match. They look at 10 biomarkers, and my son was only half. And so I declined treatment because I had read a book about a gentleman who had in Des Moines area who had AML. In fact, I went to his funeral not knowing he had died of AML. That's how crazy it is. And so I read this story, and he had died, and his wife had done an interview with the Des Moines Register, the paper of record in Iowa, and she said, had we known the hazards of the stem cell transplant, he had one, but it was a sister, which is not good. That's too close. Anyway, he lived 6 years, but he was in constant pain every day. Horrible skin cancer, 80 years, it was terrible. So I said, no, I'm not going to do this deal. Sure. Patsy and I lived our lives for the next 2 years. We treated naturopathically in Idaho. We drove to Idaho and flew to Idaho. And I thought that wonderful doctor was going to keep me from getting the cancer back, which it does tend to reoccur. No deal. We're back here in Arizona 2 years later, snowbirding in January of 19, and the cancer comes back. I go to see my doctor here, and she says, I'm putting you in the hospital today. I said, fine. So I went into the hospital here in Phoenix at Mayo Clinics, wonderful, wonderful hospital. And 2 months of chemotherapy, 2 months again, same thing. But this time I had 3 good matches, biomarker matches, 2 in Germany and 1 in Ohio, a young man in Ohio. They picked the young man in Ohio. In March of 19, I had a stem cell transplant, and here I am I am 7 years later. I started writing the book 2 years later because they consider your transplant date your new birthday. So I started writing the book when I was 2, hence the title. I just turned 2. I'm now 7, about to turn 63 in real life, but 7. And I titled it then, How I Learned to Live After Nearly Dying, because in those 4 months, 2 months in Rochester, 2 months here, you have a lot of time to think. With this chemotherapy, they would wake me up every 4 hours to take blood, to test blood, every 4 hours for 2 months, and then 2 months here. And so you have a lot of time to think, and I just started to think a lot about my life. I had 2 what I considered successful careers. I had raised 2 beautiful children. I now had my wonderful wife, Patsy. But I started to think about what had I don't want to get emotional, what had I really accomplished in my life?
Sure, I understand.
What good had I done? I was busy. I was very busy, trying to make money, trying to raise children, travel. And I leaned back into my faith, which I had never lost. Thank goodness my parents, I'm grateful to them. They raised me in the church. I've always been faithful. Uh, and I started to think about what we should do in life. And it all came back to me over those months that we should do exactly what my Lord and Savior told us to do. And he said, love God and love your neighbor. And so I've concentrated on those two things. To love my neighbor, I've always loved God. That's not necessarily difficult. He's so good to me. Oh my goodness. But I started to try to love my neighbor as myself. And that doesn't mean you always like what they do, like them necessarily. And I started looking back at my life, especially my second career. My first career was in the broadcast television business, 21 years. Great, had a lot of great times, quite successful, I think. And then I jumped into the commercial real estate business because I didn't want to move my family. And met a lot of people there, of course, clients and other people in that business. But I ran across a couple of folks who really deeply hurt me. Both of them, it was financial. They, they basically stole money from me. I mean, not out of my bank, but I didn't get paid what I was supposed to get paid. And it got to me so bad. I was so hateful. And it was just eating me up. And I finally, at that time, before all of this would have been back in the 90s and early 2000s, I finally said to myself, you've got to forgive them. I mean, it's harder on me than on anybody. And so I came to that conclusion, and I did. I forgave them both. And that set me on this path to love others as I love myself. And that's how I try to live my life. I am not successful all the time. I'm a flawed human being. But that's what the illness and I've never been afraid of dying, still not even close. I'm not ready quite yet. I'd like to spend some more years with my beautiful Patsy, but I'm not afraid. Um, but I want to live life purposefully now. I didn't do that. I was in a career. I was young, growing up, and all of that. We all go through that.
Well, we live in a society that has encouraged us just to keep going and moving and working. For a little over 8 years, I worked at a college and loved what I did, but the culture was killing me. And because I loved what I did, I kept working more and more and more because I just wanted to keep doing what I love doing. But then it made me ill. And I didn't realize it was making me ill. And I was very lucky because at the time, when I had to walk away from that job, my family was very supportive. It was like, yeah, we want you back because you know what? You've been this crazy woman for 8 years. And it was because I was hearing the words of society. Okay. And when you're in that motion, we don't always appreciate the things around us. And one of the things I love that you talk about is you can love your neighbor without liking them, without inviting them into your home. Yes. Loving your neighbor means accepting the people around you for who they are, not fighting with them, not letting their stuff get under your skin. And that's sometimes difficult in this world. And as you said, we're all flawed humans. None of us are going to do it perfectly. But I'm sure that as you said, you laid in bed trying to recover, because at the beginning, I'm sure you weren't sure is this going to work or not? You wanted to believe it, but on those tough days, I'm sure there were thoughts going through your mind, is this worth it? Because, I know a lot of people who've been through this. So when did you decide, hey, I'm going to now take my experiences and put it on paper? Because everyone wants to write a book today. In fact, everyone is encouraging me that I take my blogs and put it into a book. And I keep saying, they're out there on my website. They're free. Just go read them. And the comment is, oh, but you should write a book. So tell me, what did it take for you to decide to write the book? And how long did it take to write the book?
Well, I had no intention of writing a book, but after this whole really Patsy's and my free, wonderful life for the first number of years we knew each other and traveling and no cares whatsoever, our grown children and then her stroke in China, my goodness, and then we come back and then cancer, fatal cancer, and then we have a reprieve, but oh, the cancer's back, you do that. Close friends who knew us and kept up with that daily story kept saying, Dean, you should write a book. This has a book written on it. And I like to write, but I've certainly never written a book before. So I just, when I was 2, so sometime in 21, I sat down, would sit out in the front room of this house. One little backup story. My wife grew up in northern Arizona, and so my second cancer in 19, we were here snowbirding. They put me in the hospital, and in that 2-month stint, she would come visit me every day. God bless her. But one day she came and she said, "Why don't we just move to Arizona?" She had always wanted to move to Arizona. I was still working at that point in Des Moines. I didn't want to give that up, but I could tell this was important, obviously. I said, that's fine. So when I got out of the hospital, we were in a rental home for that snowbirding period. We looked around and we found this house, and we moved in October of 19. So that's where we are. So I would then, 2 years later, in 21, about when I was 2, I just decided I would put it down, and I sat with my iPad on the voice mode, and I would just dictate and stop and change a few things and so forth. But it took a while. It took, I want to say, it took all of a year, and maybe more, to where I felt comfortable with what I had. And then I reached out to a self-publishing company, and you pay them. That's fine. And we went back and forth on manuscripts and pictures and so forth. And so they published it. And I want to say that was probably in 21, 22, 23. So now 4 years ago. And again, it was just because, writing the book gave me pause to even think more about that time in the hospital and about life and so forth. It didn't all come. I mean, most of it came from when I was lying in bed, but I never expected to write a book. Sure. And I wasn't keeping track. But when I sat to write the book, I needed to reflect constantly about that experience. And then not just the experience of Patsy and I in those 20, now it's been 20 years, but my life in general, my growing up with my brother and my parents and school and friends and, then work, my goodness, and raising kids and all of that. And so that's when I really dug down pretty deep. Sure. And interspersed it in the book with looking back at my life and saying, yes, I had a successful life by many standards, but I just hadn't thought about what were some really. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to live out a purpose, and I thought my purpose was commercial real estate in the broadcast television business, but it wasn't. Funny that. Anyway, so
But it was your purpose at the time.
yes,
Okay. And that's
true.
one of the things that I try to remind myself. Before my husband passed away, I tried to remind him the things you did may not have been, as you look back, may not have been as perfect as you would have liked them, but you needed to do those things to get to where you are today. And, we don't have that chance. We don't have a time machine that takes us back in time and say, okay, I'm going to have a do over.
Right.
But you have a do over today that says, okay, I can sit here and I can wallow in what I've been through,
Yes.
or I can say, what can I do today that I will be proud of when I put my head on the pillow?
Yes.
And when I lost my job at the college, my first reaction was, oh, woe is me. I was 60 years old. I thought, nobody's going to want to hire me. I didn't believe in what my skills really were. But I knew that I didn't want to go back into corporate America. I just knew I couldn't do that. And so I sat down one day and I said to my husband, I want to take my education and I want to use it finally. And he goes, and how are you going to do that? Now, granted, this is 16 years ago, and I said, I want to become a podcaster. I had no idea what that really meant. I had listened to a few podcasts, but how was I going to get my name out there? How was I going to do it? But I thought the only way I'm going to do it is the way my father taught me. Do it. And, you may be talking to yourself.
Yes.
Is that a bad thing? Because sometimes you need to hear yourself think. And over the last 16 years, I've been able to find purpose. And
Yes.
we met through podmatch.com. I get anywhere from 12 to 15 referrals a day. And
Oh my.
I cannot tell you, how many it's not that I pass on them. I put them maybe for later because today their story does not resonate with where I am. And I'm not going to share somebody's story that I can't give it value to. And that's how I am with my neighbors. It doesn't mean I don't like my neighbor if I don't talk to them. What it means is if I don't have any value to share with them today, I'll say hello, I'll smile, but I don't have to connect with them any more than that. And yet there are strangers that I may connect with today just because I see the value in the connection. So we have to be more mindful. That's what happened to you as you laid there in bed and thought about it. Is like, what did I do in my life? How important was that? And do I want to still doing it? Maybe you wanted to go back to television for all we know. So,
well, you're right. It was useful at the time. It was not a life without purpose at that time. That purpose was raising my family and making good in the world and so forth. But what I've learned is there is another purpose now, and that purpose is to love other people, help them if I can, in any way that I can. And I quote, there's a gentleman by the name of Gad Sad that I quote about love, and he said, love is, as something that you touched on, love is, I'm not going to get it right, I should have brought the book, the quote, but it's accepting people for who they are and where they are now, and letting that be okay.
yes.
Just letting it be okay. And I probably didn't do that my whole life.
Well, a lot of us didn't because we didn't understand it. I think we're starting to understand that concept more today than ever. We hear it a lot when we're talking about an individual who has Alzheimer's. Okay, meet them where they are. You don't have to take them back. You don't have to take them into the future. Where are they right now? I had to learn to do that with my youngest son, who's on the autism spectrum. Very high level functioning, but there are days that his brain just doesn't go into connection, and I have to meet him where he is. I can't say, oh, don't worry about that, because he's going to worry no matter what I say. So all I can do is listen to him, let him know that I'm listening to him, and then he can make the changes if he needs to. And I'm sure when you were ill, people didn't really know how to communicate with you either, because you have a terminal illness.
That's right. That's right.
Should I even come visit you because I may catch it, which of course you're not going to.
Right. Right.
But we don't know what to say to each other. And we can learn to meet that person where they are. You start the conversation. We can then join it.
Yeah, that's so true. I have to let your audience know, and thank you for having me. I want to let your audience know a real serendipity. Well, again, this the Dr. DeMartini always says, don't worry about bad things in life because good will come of it. Don't worry, don't overdwell on the good things because, hey, bad things can come. And he's, I believe, exactly right. Well, during this transplant process in 19, I was told that my transplant donor was a young man in Ohio. That's all they would tell me, because for 1 year after your transplant, they don't let you communicate. In case you pass away, they don't want to foster the relationship, so forth. So during that year, I thought a lot about this donor. I knew he was a young man. He was only in his early 20s, maybe even late teens. And I thought, why would a young man sign up? Because you have to, there are two matching services, as I understand it, in the United States. Be the matches, and that's not the one that found my match, but that's one of them. There's another one, doesn't matter. You have to actually do a swab to give them your DNA so that they can look at it. And so I wondered, why would a young man at 19 years old or so sign up for this to give away stem cells? And I just determined that it was probably because he had a friend, a relative that needed it or did give stem cells and save somebody's life. And that was the reason. It was a really altruistic reason. No. When I finally, after a year, I got to speak with Trevor Osting, a wonderful young man. He was a nursing student in Ohio. And one day he walked out of a class and there was a table with this organization set up outside the class. And he thought, what the heck, I'll sign up. So it was just it was a God thing. It was just a happenstance thing. Sure. I mean, it was 2 years before I had no matches. Now I had 3. And so the first thing I asked Trevor when I got to communicating via the internet was, why did you do this? Why did you do this? And it was just that. He just walked out of this class. It wasn't some grand, grand thing.
Right.
But what's wonderful about this is he met his now wife in class to be a nurse. They're both emergency room nurses in Ohio. I got to go to his wedding. He invited me to his wedding about a year and a half ago. So Patsy, my wife, and I traveled to Ohio. It was so wonderful to meet. We had met Trevor. He and his soon-to-be wife at that point traveled here. They were going to vacation. They traveled all over the world. They work 2 3-day, 12-hour on shifts, and they work 2 weeks back to back, and then they just pick up and travel the world. But so they came to Arizona and so we met them here, and it was wonderful. But a woman who he looked at as his grandmother had just passed away, so he had to run home. But anyway, Patsy and I got to go to Ohio, meet his family, meet his wife's family, go to the wedding, go to the reception. It was just it was just so wonderful and a beautiful experience to meet this young man and the people that raised him to be unselfish. And I just, it was just, it's been a whole great serendipity of my experience.
Well, how can people find your book, read your book, get to know you better?
You can. I have a website. It's my name. It's a long name. DeanWeitenhagen.com. DeanWeitenhagen.com. But the book is on Amazon also. Um, it's and I'm not trying to sell books, but I think it's a valuable book. And the reason I did it in the end, yes, people said you should write a book. I wanted to give people some hope in medical situations like mine, because I never gave up. As I said, I've never been afraid of dying. So I said, hey, do what you want to do. Let's get on with the program. But I think the book, and I heard from numbers of readers, it's a strong, powerful statement of hope for them or a loved one who's going through a medical problem. Because that's what it's filled with is the journey and to live. Yes, we all have to make plans and do things, but to live for today, love people, love your God. So DeanWeitenhagen.com if they'd like to, or go to Amazon. I just turned 2. I learned to live after nearly dying.
Well, we will put all that in the show notes, so there's no excuse for anybody listening not to find the book. I want to wish you the best of health going forward. Thank Patsy for giving up some time with you today because we appreciate you being with us.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and I hope people, again, I'm not out to sell books, but I'm out to spread hope and purpose. And thank you for giving me the opportunity. I do really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon, Dean. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.